I'm live. Yo, my people. Yo, my people. Peace and love to you, brother. Peace and love to you, brother. Peace and love, my brother. How are you doing? Yo, I wasn't planning on going live today, but I just realized that it's Youth Day today in South Africa. It's Youth Day today in South Africa. And I came across a lot of, videos. I come across a video of a young lady who was Molo Amandla. I came across a video of a young lady who was shot at during the political apartheid, because the economical one and the geographical spatial one is still very much alive. We are still living in an apartheid, and I thought we could talk about that. I don't talk much about political stuff. I don't like talking about political stuff because I feel like they're just futile and cumbersome. But perhaps sometimes we actually have to talk about it. Thank you, Sankara. Thank you, Sankara. No, I invited Brother Mukaranga wa Gwambe yesterday to talk about, the Kalanga side of our history, because I think it's a part of our history that's being abused a lot. Yeah. Yeah, Brother Lungani, politics, it's so gimmicky, man. It's puppetry. More than anything, it's puppetry, and it's not genuine at all. A lot of the people who are in politics are not genuine. They don't actually care about the politics themselves. But we could talk about politics without talking about political parties and politicians. Because politics, in essence, is the issues we face. It's the matters that concern us. So I suppose in that sense, then we are talking about politics every day. But a lot of the times when we talk about the Youth Day, firstly, before I go any further, the Youth Day is obviously a commemoration of the June 16, 1976, event where high school students and many other people in different parts of the country went out in numbers to protest Bantu education, first and foremost. And Bantu education was dangerous because we're still dealing with Bantu education products to this day. People who are products of Bantu education are a big problem in society. They are a big problem in society. The things they do are so questionable. It was an evil system, Bantu education. But was there a plan when there was a protest against Bantu education, which was absolutely, the protest was absolutely acceptable? It had to happen. It had to be demolished, the whole Bantu education system. But what is the replacement of Bantu education? What replaced Bantu education? OBE. NS, what was the other one? NCS. CAPS. Who decides this curricula? What is the goal of these educational systems? What's the goal? What's the end goal? Are we consulted? Because now today we talk, people have to learn about their history and about who they are, about their languages, about indigenous sciences, indigenous metallurgy, indigenous industry. They need to learn on TikTok now about these things. So what's the goal of the modern day education system? So it just feels like sometimes, the efforts of the youth of 1976 and the youths of the other years as well, because the youths never stopped fighting after 1976. The youth of the other years as well have fought valiantly. The youth of 1976 fought primarily against the Afrikaans Medium Decree, where Afrikaans was forced to become the language of instruction. Basically, these people were establishing Afrikaans as a language that was going to dominate all of us. But Afrikaans is a young language, you know. Our languages are so old. It's barely developed for a lot of things. Barely. Even less for our context. We have a lot of practices in our cultures that Africans can never be able to explain. So it was absolutely abominable for JG Erasmus and the other Bantu education officials to even suggest that Afrikaans could be sufficient as a medium of instruction for us. Absolutely impossible. Afrikaans could not be sufficient as a medium of instruction for us. It's just not, developed enough. I'm saying it again. Afrikaans as a language is not developed enough to teach us anything, really. How do you even begin explaining umemulo in Afrikaans, or ingqithi in Afrikaans, or imbeleko in Afrikaans? How do you even begin explaining idini or umhlabelo or mutlabelo in Afrikaans? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's just not developed enough for us. So the fight was a fair and just fight against Afrikaans medium in schools, And it was not just the medium, also the content of the curated work that they're being taught. They were being taught to be hewers of wood and fetchers of water, not to be thinkers, not at all. So yeah, it was a just fight, a just a backlash that the Bantu Education Afrikaans Medium Decree faced. But now that decree is gone. You can learn in English, you can learn in Afrikaans if you want, and many people still continue to learn in Afrikaans. People like the late Bishop Desmond Tutu were involved in fighting against this, They were involved in fighting against this. And this is also why the resentment of Afrikaans for a lot of people in South Africa as the language of the oppressor stems from as well, When you force people to forfeit using their own language, force them to speak another language, it creates resentment. Not to say the language itself, is anything bad, but it's going to take a while for it to be accepted. It's going to take a while, but it's not a bad language per se, not at all. Yeah, I mean, it has become some kind of a hybrid language anyway nowadays, It has become some kind of a hybrid. But it was the whole thing of Youth Day, as much as the core dissatisfaction those days was, especially in Soweto, the Afrikaans Medium Decree. The problems of the youth never ended or began with Afrikaans. The entire system was completely broken to this day. This is why then at universities in South Africa, to this day, we see from time to time issues like fees must fall. Thank you, brother Ramutev. Fees must fall, where students are fighting against exorbitant university fees. Exorbitant, absolutely insensible university fees. That don't make sense at all, I mean, some of the fees would make sense for international students, but for locals, it doesn't make sense at all. 10 years ago, I was at UCT, University of Cape Town, known as the best university in Africa. And that year, there was something called Roads Must Fall. Students were fighting against a statue and a lot of symbols on campus of Cecil John Rhodes, who was obviously a very prominent member of the entire British imperial project. You would remember that Zimbabwe and other neighboring countries were once called Rhodesia, based on Rhodes' last name. Yes. So at UCT, there was a massive statue overlooking the entire middle and lower campus and the entire Cape Flats region. A statue of Cecil John Rhodes. A student called Chumani Makwele, and it was on a Friday. I remember very well. I had just finished some of my workshops on campus, was walking down to the lower campus where I resided at that time. I'm passing the statue because everyone who's walking up or down the Jamison Hall in the library is bound to pass this hovering, gigantic statue of Cecil John Rhodes. As I'm passing the statue of John Rhodes, I could smell, I could smell so awfully. And then I see this guy who's wearing a miner's helmet, a work suit, and he's holding a porta potty, bucket type of thing with feces, with waste, and he's throwing that at the statue, and it smelled so bad. The stench was inescapable. And I was like, okay, what's happening? Didn't really know. But then in the next few days, the whole thing started to pick up. It was a protest against the imperial and apartheid symbolism. Imperial and apartheid symbolism. It was not just the Cecil John Rhodes statue that was the problem. It was the naming of the buildings, the art on the walls. I remember this one building had a massive painting of this European man who's holding a shambok and he's hitting what seems to be a black man, almost like how the slave masters used to hit the slaves. So obviously they explain that as being art, but for me that's just colonial symbolism. But even further down the building, I see a sculpture of a naked African, woman with big bums, but it's naked and it's the middle of the lobby in the library. These kind of symbols just didn't make sense to me in the most, known university in Africa to have symbols like that. A massive towering statue of an imperialist, a naked African woman on campus, a European man hitting an African man, and then you call that art. Even the names of some of the buildings, the residences. I mean, there was a hall named after Jan Smuts, who was very twisted, Smart Hall. So the battles of 1976 then would be rendered incomplete because there are still battles that are still happening to this day. Not many studies are done on the number of students who fight to at least be admitted at universities, but actually never get to graduate because of financial problems. Anyway, I'm saying all of this to give context to the whole struggle of the youth and education. And even when they do get educated, they still don't get jobs. They still don't get jobs. And we could argue all day about who must create the jobs. For me, it's just the environment is just toxic. It's a toxic soup that's just built to make young people fail. And that's just it. So Youth Day then, I mean, as much as we do acknowledge what the youth of 76 did, the youth of 2025 has very little to even celebrate, The youth of 2025 has very little to celebrate. But it's not just the youth, the people generally, you understand? The people generally have very little to celebrate. So, yeah, man, it's just stuff like that, that make you think, stuff like that make you think, like, what are we doing? Because people are told they live in democracy. Oh, you guys are free now. Work hard, go to school. You'll succeed. But really, really, how many people work hard? They usually working hard means you must work 100 times more than your equivalent peers to even get in some of the industries. You work as hard as you want, but it means nothing really. It means nothing. You don't get a job and you won't get a job. Thank you, Brother Ramutev. It's true, brother. There's very little pushback. It's There's very little pushback, and I think the South African and generally African youth seem to think someone's gonna come and save them. Someone's gonna come and help them. Someone's gonna come and make some change for them. It's not gonna happen, you know. Nobody's coming to save anyone here. Nobody was coming to save anyone back then, and nobody's coming to save anyone now. And I think that's the reality of the situation, you know. That is the reality of the situation. As much as the communities that a lot of youth come from are toxic altogether, the communities are just toxic, full of substances, full of, toxic beverages. And I'm using these words just to avoid being restricted. Dangerous weapons and all that, you know. Uh, And this is the reality, man. And it's not just South African. Honestly speaking, it's a global reality. All our people in every country in the world are suffering from the same situation. You go to Brazil, it's the same situation. You go to the Americas, the North America is the same situation. So for me, I think it's just inauthentic to push the whole thing of Youth Day. And I think it's fine to continue having Youth Day because we want the holiday. I want to take a break and rest and not go to work and stuff like that. But I think the youth need to know that nobody's going to come and help them in any way. You know, men rose, men fought, and men died, and things have not changed. The likes of Desmond Tutu, who were quite involved in in fighting, or at least that's what we were being told. We don't know if they were really fighting because there's a lot of other things. The fighters, people who fought for freedom, sometimes they made some questionable decisions where one ends up thinking maybe they were also part of the system. You know, the whole thing of controlled opposition. And I think that's where these movements of freedom or movements that are trying to awaken people fail. There's always controlled opposition. Always controlled opposition, people who are planted by the same people who are causing the problem. They are planted to be the solution. And this is how you end up with no real change because there's controlled opposition. So I just had these thoughts, man, when I was thinking about the Youth Day situation and reflecting on the problems that youth still face at universities, in the workplace, and how much you actually have to work. You have to work like 10 times more than the average peer in any other real society. You have to work 10 times more to even enter certain spaces. And that cannot be, that's not normal. That's not normal. People who come from countries that actually function, they don't even begin, like they don't know how to conceptualize and fathom the reality of youth in places like South Africa. They don't. The question was the result of a protest of this event, or did I miss what it was about? The Youth Day. No, the Youth Day, remember, it was during Apartheid, which is still very much alive to this day in South Africa. But it was during the political apartheid where, the education, the Bantu Education Department, they made a decree to make Afrikaans the medium of instruction. So to establish Afrikaans as a medium of instruction for everyone, even people who don't speak Afrikaans. It's like saying now isiZulu must become the medium of instruction for all schools, and everyone is forced to be instructed in isiZulu. You understand that majority of people who don't, okay, not majority, everyone else who doesn't speak isiZulu as a first language will need to work very hard to even be able to understand and grasp the concepts that are being taught at school. A lot of African youth, when they learn these subjects, because English or Afrikaans is not their first language. So what they need to do is to actually translate the stuff they learn at school. So here you are at an accounting exam or at a financial maths exam at university, fourth year, very high level, very, very high level exam. And you're reading about these financial instruments and assets and liabilities. First thing you need to do is to firstly read and translate in your head. You read and translate in your head before you could even understand. Do you understand the difference it makes to learn in a language that's your native language? Someone doesn't have to explain something twice to you because it just makes sense. It's your native language. So making languages like Afrikaans the medium of instruction is not as shallow as it may seem. Oh, it's just language. No, it automatically sets up native African speakers at an advantage. Do you understand how unfair that is? Because I could say the same thing that, okay, then let's make isiZulu the language of instruction. Let's do it. Let's see in the next 10 years who's going to excel. You understand? Firstly, then they're going to fail language as a subject. Before anything else, they're going to fail language. And this is the problem I realized when I went and did maths at university and financial maths. Like those subjects are heavy on English. They are very heavy on English. And I'm talking about maths, like pure maths, financial maths, computer science. These scientific subjects are heavy on language. If you do not understand the language at a native level, there are high chances you're not going to do very well. So I realized, no, man, you need to know the language actually to do well in some of these subjects, to do well in maths, because it stops about being numbers now, stops about being about numbers. It becomes more about problem solving. And to solve problems, you need to understand them. To understand problems, you need to be able to read and analyze them with language. And I realized, no, man, like people who actually do not speak English well fail. They fail science. And it makes sense if you think about it, because it's just language, really. That's what it is. So the whole thing about language policy, it's extremely important because it can determine how your young people do well and not do well at school. Brother Ramutev, you want me to explain apartheid and not that the mainstream explanation? Thank you so much, my brother. I'm going to explain apartheid, not the mainstream explanation. So, South Africa, ne? The first batch of white people who came in ships here was in the 1400s, right? They did come, they did know about this region, but they were not very familiar, right? They're not very familiar with the region of South Africa. And then another group came in the 1500s. Remember now, the Portuguese had already established a port in the southeastern country called Mozambique. So obviously there was European presence already in Southern Africa. We had Arabs, we had a lot of traders. But in South Africa specifically, 1480s, you have your De Almeida, you have your Vasco da Gamas in the 1500s as well, your Infantinos who are starting to come here. But they decide now, and even the English, by the way, in the early 1600s, a lot of English ships start coming. There's a lot of ships who came way before 1652. But now, what starts happening is in 1652, they want to establish now an actual station for their ships that are going over to Asia. By then, there was no Suez Canal. So they couldn't just go through the so-called Middle East. They had to come through South Africa, the southern tip of the country, right? So obviously they gave it a name, the Cape of Storms, and then the Cape of Good Hope in Portuguese, by the way. And then it was translated and then ended up being the Cape, blah, 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 blah. So 1652, the Dutch East India Company. The Dutch East India Company as mandated by the Dutch royal family, comes and establishes in the Western Cape. Yeah, no, Ndwaiza, on Wednesday we're gonna discuss Uso Shangan. There are some people that I wanna include, so we're still waiting on them. But Wednesday 7 p.m. or I will confirm. I'll between Tuesday 7 p.m. and Wednesday 7 p.m. But yeah, we'll discuss that. So what happens with 1652? The Dutch East India Company comes and establishes a refreshment station. They first built a mud fortress, mud castle. They sent one of their guys, Jan van Riebeeck, by the way, who was married to this Russian woman. But the first population to come was not just Dutch. The population themselves, like the guys were in the ships, were not just Dutch. They were English. We had some German. We had some, Dutch, like more like Flemish, Belgian today. So those European groups, right? A lot of them were Protestant Christian. All right, Nondwaiza. All right. Thank you. Those people were Protestant Christians. So there was also this issue of Catholics persecuting people, as they would put it. Anyway, I'm putting into context the idea that it was just the Dutch who came. No, the very first group of Europeans who arrived were already mixed, and we have the exact numbers of how many Dutch were there, how many English, how many Germans. It was a mixed group of Europeans from the very beginning. It was not just Dutch or what, but the ruling group was the Dutch royal family through the Dutch East India Company. Anyway, so they established what they call the Cape Colony. They unalive groups of people. They take lands, they take animals, and all that, right? Until such a time that the British royal family. So you realize that this is about royal families. This is about royal families. It's the Dutch royal family was the first one to take full hold of the Cape Colony, right? Remember, as the Dutch are busy, the Portuguese are still there in southeast Mozambique. They are taking slaves. Slaves are being sold from Mozambique. Slaves are being sold from Zimbabwe. Slaves are being sold all the way in the coast and inland. So now, what the Dutch are doing, they're starting to get slaves from Mozambique, slaves from Zimbabwe, slaves from Angola, slaves from Nigeria and Benin. Obviously, back in the day, those names were not really, the borders were not the same, the boundaries. You'd find that the place called Benin includes Nigeria. But anyway, Central African slaves came to Cape Town. East African slaves came to Cape Town. West African slaves came to Cape Town. And some South Africans were also slaves. It was the royal families and some nobilities. Some noble bloodlines were heavily involved. Now, what you have is that after the Dutch colonization, well, it didn't end. You have the British, right? Now, Great Britain occupies Cape Town in the 1790s. So around 1795, the British start now to get involved. They start to get involved. Obviously, they are trying to take over. They're also the French are also arriving in the country. Here in Cape Town, you have places like Franschhoek, which is the French corner. You have last names like Duplessis, places like Dinel, Dutoit, or in South Africa, they say Dutoit. So these are all originally French families, and there are many others. Sandy is asking who were the people in Cape Town. Obviously, there were communities in Cape Town. We had the Okhokwa, who occupied especially the Cape Winelands regions, such as Stellenbosch, Paarl. They also occupied places like Somerset West today and Strand, all along the Bergrivier. you had the Qohokwa, you had the Kurikaikwa. These are the people who were mostly around, around the CBD. But deep in Cape Town, we had another group of the Kurikaikwa called Kamakwa, or the Watermans, the Cape Mans and the Watermans. These are the people who lived near the river, upon which Cape Town was built. These are the people like Auchumao, Krotoa, etc., etc. You also had, other groups such as Ainukwa, but the Ainukwa were more on the side of the Overberg, like Grabo, Podrefier. These are the people who interacted greatly with other groups in the Eastern Cape. They were moving in between Eastern Cape and Western Cape. There's also evidence and stories about that. The presence of Eastern Cape people in Cape Town before Jan van Riebeeck. It was confirmed by Auchumao. It was confirmed by Krotoa. It's there in the diary of Jan van Riebeeck. So those were the Ainukwa people. They were in just at the entry of the Cape Colony. There were many others still in the Western Cape, but I'm talking about Cape Town now. So yeah, you had the Sonkwa, who were like hunter-gatherer people. I don't know what Bantus is, but I just told you, Guti, the Kainuka were moving in between Xhosa land and Western Cape. I literally just said that now. No, man. I don't play like that. So yeah. Anyway, the British wanted to take over from the Dutch, ne? So now the British come through between 1795 and 1803. You have the British. Hey, they starting colonizing heavily in the country. This is where now they are starting to push. They're starting to push towards inland, because the Dutch were told that there's gold and all those things, right? So now they're starting to push heavily inland. From the 1680s already, the goal is to go inland. And also there's mythologies that are spreading around about the mines of King Solomon, that the mines of King Solomon are here in South Africa and all those things. So there's a lot of things that are pushing these guys to look for gold. They believe that the mines of King Solomon were here in Sofala, Mozambique. They say it's Ophir or Sophir in the Bible, and all those kind of things. Anyway, so you have the British now trying to take over, fighting with the Dutch, and the British go in. They go in, causing lots of wars as well, including now the Boers as well are trying to run away from the Cape Colony. They want to go into the country, creating now what we call the Voortrekkers and all that. Anyway, it ends up creating what we call frontier wars in the Eastern Cape, Western Cape areas. But the wars start in the Cape Town region as the Dutch Khoi Wars. They spread to the Eastern Cape by the 1700s, and then they span almost 100 years, where you have the Xhosa Khoi groups fighting to preserve the frontiers, their boundaries and all that for almost 100 years to 101. And then it moves over areas and all that, right? So, and I'm skipping a lot of details here, but I'm trying to give you an idea. At the end of the day, the British take the country, they control the country, and then they establish their own colony and all that. And then the Boer, who are the Dutch descendants, they establish their Boer republics. The country is separated. In 1910, these people decide to come together, because some are being mistreated, because there was an Anglo-Boer war where the Boer were put in concentration camps and all that. Anyway, 1910, the Boer republics and the British colonies decide to come together. But by then already, like, the natives of South Africa are already dispossessed completely. By 1910, they're already dispossessed. They're at a huge disadvantage. Not to say some of the royal families were already attending European institutions. By the 1800s already, royal families, native royal families, were attending universities overseas in Europe. The reason why the British allowed this is because they wanted the royal families to accept Christianity and the way of life of Europe. And indeed, a lot of the people who ended up becoming politicians in South Africa are royal descendants who went to European schools. I mean, the likes of Mandela, who's well known worldwide, the wife of Mandela, Winnie Madikizela, O.R. Tambo, Chief Albert Lutuli. These people, all of them, are royalties. It was not by mistake. Their families, remember, they are the ones who used to lead the fights against the Europeans. So their families were heavily involved with Europeans, and therefore they were also the first groups to accept Christianity, a Western education, together with the war, the victims of some wars. So you have your Langalibalele Dubes and all that. Even to this day, a lot of the politicians, the older politicians, they are royal descendants. You have the Zumas, the Zuma family, they have a chieftaincy, they are a royal bloodline themselves. You have the Holomisas are royals themselves, they are chiefs. So it's not by mistake. Anyway, in 1948, in 1910, the Dutch, the Boer republics, and the English colonies, the British colonies, come together to form the Union of South Africa. This is the beginning of South Africa as we understand it, the Union. Yeah, where they actually gather the wealth of the country now based on whiteness, based on their European identity. At first, it was more like, okay, look, I'm fighting for my king, British king, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, we are Dutch descendants, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, we are Boer, we want to be independent from the Dutch East India Company. Now, by 1910, the narrative is changing already now. Not to say these people don't hate each other, but they hate each other much less. They are concerned with keeping the natives poor and under-resourced is stronger than their hate for each other. So in 1910, they come together to form the Union of South Africa. The Union of South Africa. Now, between 1910 and 1948, apartheid already is happening. But let me say apartheid started in 1652. When they settled in the country, apartheid began. Because apartheid means separateness. Apart in apartheid means apart, like separate. Hate is a suffix that means the state of being, like the English hood, childhood, womanhood. So apartheid is literally aparthood, or more correctly, apartness, separateness, the state of being apart. That's what it was about, keeping the natives apart.
So it's like
Because there was
saying,
no law preventing Dutch from marrying English or Dutch from doing business with English. There was no law. So apartness didn't work as long as they were white. But anything else must be kept apart from whiteness. But not just from whiteness, but kept apart from resources, kept apart from practicing your spiritual system, kept apart from speaking your language, kept apart from practicing your medical systems. When apartheid was not just about education, everything that was native, the native people had to be separated from it. So they created reserves called Bantustans, like the stan you find in names like Hindustan, Pakistan, Afghanistan. They took that stan, they applied the word Bantu, which is not a real word in essence, because in the real context is Abantu, the people. So the stan you see them, they created Bantu stans, which were these like tiny reserves of land where the native people were restricted. And by that, the native people lost any citizenship to the real country that they belong to. So in apartheid South Africa, black South Africans were not South African. Black South Africans were not South African. They became South African in 1994 when apartheid South Africa ended. Only politically, by the way. Most black South Africans, even right now as we speak, are not South African economically. Most black South Africans will die having never taken a flight in their lives. Most black South Africans will die having never traveled to other provinces in the country. Most Black South Africans will die having never been to university, having never had the chance to enjoy the beauty of their country. So apartheid ended politically, but it's still very much there economically. Geographically, most Black South Africans feel very uncomfortable in the lush and fancy suburbs of the country. So that's what apartheid was about. It was not just about separating the physical human, but it was about separating the natives from their true heritage, the country. To this day, many Black South Africans, when they're in these fancy suburbs, they feel uncomfortable because they know they're not welcome. You just walk on the pavement, which is sidewalk, in any rich suburb. The WhatsApp groups start buzzing. Oh, there's a suspicious BM on the move. BM, by the way, is black man. You see all the private security companies coming to drive near. Anyway, 1948, the National Party, which was the Afrikaner Nationalist Party, wins the elections. As the National Party won the elections, now they take it another level. This apartheid thing, they take it a much higher level. It becomes official. Everything is categorized according to race. But one of the most brutal things they did was to do the Native Land Act, which was way earlier. Way earlier. It was 1913, way before the apartheid. Land was stripped. And this is the biggest sin they caused this land. The stripping of native land is the biggest sin they caused this land. I mean, it comes just after the sin of them ever coming here. Because that's the original sin. They are coming all together was just the original sin. They were not supposed to come here. They were supposed to go to India to take spices and go back to the Netherlands. This land is not suitable for an evil group of people who hate the natives. You do not come to a people's land and want to establish a whites-only community. You don't do that. That is a distorted and twisted, perverted view of the world. So basically, between 1652 and 1948, apartheid was already happening. Already. People who think about it started in 1948 don't know a single thing about this country's history. In Cape Town, where these people landed, in the first 30 years of their landing, 70% of the population was wiped out. Do you understand that to wipe out 70% of the population in one generation, what the things you need to do? 30 years is one generation, a single generation. 70% of the population was wiped out. The remnants had to run to Namibia, run to Northern Cape, run to Eastern Cape. Today, they call people who come from the Eastern Cape to Cape Town immigrants. How quick people forget. Anyway, 1948, now apartheid, a set of fully legal laws that prohibit any kind of development for the natives of South Africa. Any kind of development. And I mean any kind. You can't run a shop. You can't have a real professional trade. You can't be educated properly. You can't marry outside of your race, which honestly, that one is fine. Because anyway, you will always be looked down on. Just marry amongst yourself, really. You can't be in certain areas. You can't move in your own land, in the land of your forefathers. You can't move. All these crazy laws, in 1948 were put into effect. It was a brutal police state. Apartheid was a police military state. It was not some normal country. People say, oh, it was the good old days. Of course, it was the good old days for the minority who are benefiting from the country called South Africa, which majority of the natives were not part of. Majority of the native people of this land, Ngaremap, were not part of South Africa. It was not a real country to begin. South Africa was not a real country. It was just some political tool that was created to give wealth to some people who came here from Europe. And a lot of those people who came here from Europe, a lot of them were poor when they left Europe. It was not noble families. It was poor, low-level workers who realized that, hey, we could just unalive these people and take what they have. Poor low-level workers, they were poor until the 1900s. They just became rich like 100 years ago, most of them. 70 years ago, some of them. They were poor until they were working in the mines, some of these people. Just now. We have political parties like the South African Communist Party. It started as a party that represented white miners. Mine workers were white. But the apartheid government, 1948, you know what they did? They made sure that no white person is going to be working class. They made sure giving them government contract, giving them preference at work. They basically did affirmative action on steroids. But let's go back a bit. Ne? I think this is very important to mention when it comes to the apartheid. The occult side of it. The occult side of it. There was an organization called the Broedersbond, which is one kind of a secret society. There are many other secret societies. But there was one secret society here in South Africa that was behind apartheid heavily. In fact, a lot of the government members of the National Party were part of the Broederbond, the secret societies of the Afrikaners. So the Broederbond, or Afrikaner Broederbond, it was established by H.J. Klopper, H.W. van der Merwe, D.H.C. Du Plessis, and the Reverend Joshua Nord. Very important to note the pastor who was a part of this secret society, because this secret society was behind the building of what became South Africa today. It was not just some government program. There were secret societies working behind the scenes as the hidden hand behind the Iron Curtain does, running things. So apartheid was bigger than it seemed even. It was a secret society handwork, plus the people who benefited from it, the civilians who benefited from it. It's amazing today that no one approved apartheid. When you ask them, oh no, we were always against it. My father didn't like apartheid. Nobody liked it. Kandi, why was it on for so long? Why was it never voted against if nobody actually approved of it? Because everyone that you ask today, the beneficiaries, nobody was happy with apartheid. They knew it was bad. No, they didn't. So the Afrikaner Broederbond was heavily behind the apartheid system. Please note that. That secret society, the pastors who were part of the founders, the politicians, the doctors were heavily involved in the establishment of apartheid. You see universities like UJ, University of Johannesburg today, which was obviously run Afrikaans Universiteit. Universities like Wits were built by Broederbond money. We have underground tunnels here in South Africa today that were built back in the days by the Broederbond. We have companies that are Broederbond products. Santam, a lot of these insurance and banking companies. To this day, if you see how they operate, look at their modus operandi, you realize, hey, these companies, they still push the same agenda. Someone is saying, so it was the same people who established Israel. Like this. In my language, Ngamashi. Afrikaner apartheid South Africa and the state of Israel today, same thing. They are twins. In fact, they were established 7 days apart from each other. Same year, just 7 days apart from each other. Do you understand the symbolism that carries? So apartheid then, obviously you get then the mainstream narrative. Oh, it was the National Party, this evil National Party. Those people were taking instructions. Yes, they were evil. Yes, they believed in it. Yes, they wanted it to continue. But there was another machinery behind. You think it's a mistake that apartheid South Africa, for the people who benefited from it, was such a successful project internationally? The currency was so strong because they had a strong international network that they still have to this day. That they still have to this day. So also remember now, the 1948 thing is just the legal official beginning of apartheid South Africa under the Afrikaners. But apartheid South Africa was already long before that. That's why parties like the ANC came from original parties which already existed before 1948. From the 1910s already, there were native movements that were fighting against the oppression of our people. So our people were already oppressed before 1948. Yeah, the ANC. The ANC is a product of an earlier movement. It is a product of an earlier movement which was established, uh, the South African Native National Congress. So the African National Congress comes from the South African Native National Congress, which was established in 1912. Just of South Africa was apartheid. When the British were still running things, apartheid was already there. Afrikaner Party winning the elections, the Nationalist Party. And the Nationalist Party was focusing on taking the Afrikaners out of poverty, from being mining workers and all that. You understand? So now between 1948 to 1994, it's what now is mostly spoken about. Yeah, it's the military state now. People are being pushed even further into homelands. Even the homelands that were established, because the idea was that homelands are independent, right? They are not part of South Africa. But they were not independent because even the leaders in the homelands had to be puppets of the apartheid country. Which is crazy because the leaders in the homelands were supposed to be indigenous kings. But no, if the king disagreed with the apartheid government, well, he would be removed. And there were many who were removed and killed because of that. So even in the homelands, the leaders were generally puppets. They're generally puppets. So it was it was a multinational movement. Mura is saying the same people who created the Boer Brotherhood created another multinational society called WWF. Absolutely, it was an international movement. It still is to this day. It still is to this day. So the idea here was that you take the natives, you completely separate them from their identity, you reduce them to nothing in their own land, you take all their lands until their memory of themselves is completely wiped out. They understand their existence is to serve us. That's what apartheid is about. To teach the natives that the natives' divine reason to exist is to serve the white man. Nothing else. Apartheid doesn't say the native must be gone. Apartheid actually needs the native to be alive because the native needs to clean after me when I go to the bathroom. The native needs to sweep my streets. The native needs to work. So it was not about necessarily removing the people from the land, as in like completely, wiping them off. Yeah. Spiritually, physically, culturally. But the biggest mistake of the system of apartheid, and this is coming from a native of South Africa, the biggest mistake was to separate our people and let them stay together. Yes, that had its own repercussions because men had to leave their houses and work in mines. Men stopped working the soil and all that. But leaving our people alone, they found themselves again and started to organize. And the little bit of indigenous knowledge they had, they transferred it over to people like me, which is why I can still speak like this about things. I don't need some society or some journal someone else, some reliable source to tell me. I know it from the horse's mouth. Our parents told us very clearly. You see, you had even like sangomas, like traditional healers, who were working with the apartheid government. There's this one, Khotso Situns, a guy, Umputi. He was busy working there, consulting for Hendrik Verwoerd. So weird. Our people have always been screws very loose. Because how do you go and offer the indigenous powers to the same people? But it was like that, yabo. So anyway, so apartheid was just violence and aggression and all that, right? And it's very important to understand that South Africa was not some first world country. The truth is that it was not a first world country. It was not a first world country. It was a first world country for like 10% of the population. They had tar roads, they had electricity, they had running water. Majority of the natives never even tasted that. They didn't know what a tap was, tap water. They had to go get the water from rivers. They didn't know what using cars was like, or even driving, or even owning cars. They didn't know how to use electricity. They had to cook in the fire outside. So the idea that, oh no, apartheid government was so effective. They built so effective systems. Which systems? They didn't build systems. They built systems to extract resources. Just like it's still like that to this day. Companies like Lonmin, Anglo-American, Anglo Gold, Ashanti, go extract gold, extract minerals, but the communities from which they take those gold are not developed. The only thing you will see is the road from the mine to the place where they sell the gold or they export it. And that's about it. So the development that was there, I've watched videos, man. I've watched videos of apartheid South Africa from the white people's perspective. Hey, it was a nice country, Shem. For them, I understand why they defend it. I understand why they act like it was not an evil thing. I get it. It's the selfishness of people. That selfishness, denialism, high level gaslighting. It was nice for them, They developed a good culture. They had beaches to enjoy. They had restaurants to eat from. They had a good life, but our people didn't. Our people lasted a good life in the 1600s, early 1600s. From there on, they never had a good life, really. Our good old days are before European invasion. So I get why the beneficiaries of apartheid say it was good old days. It was really good old days for them. Hey, Baba. The most incompetent people had jobs, guaranteed pension, retirement funds. Their incompetence didn't mean anything because the goal was to ensure that they become upper middle class people. At the very least, just middle class. Thank you, Lwazi. Thank you, Lwazi. Yes, it's true that it's the most unequal country in the world, according to the World Bank. South Africa is the most unequal country. You can look at all the development indices. You can look at quality of life. You can look at access to resources and all that. Before 1994, please have a look at that. South Africa was not a first world country. For 90% of the people who live here, it wasn't. And there are some native people who are going to say, oh no, they built a soccer stadium, shame, here. But it's just a few people who stayed in townships. Majority of the country were not in townships during apartheid. They were in reserves. Only the man could leave, go to the mines, go work in some firms, earn 2 rand or whatever, 30 cents a week, 20 cents a week, come back home. Have you seen the pay slips from the apartheid time? People need to really look at these things. Go look at a pay slip from apartheid times. Yeah, our parents, when they talk about money, my parents were born in 1955. My mother, from 1955. My father was born in 1948. They are both still alive. They will tell you straight. My father worked in Rustenburg in the Northwest region where they were working with platinum. My father worked in Gauteng in the Johannesburg region where they worked with platinum and gold. And then he worked in Cape Town for a good part of his life in construction, building the most expensive suburbs in Fishhook and Wynberg, but he never gets to enjoy them. If they see him walking there, he's a suspicious black man. But when he builds those apartment buildings, when he builds those hotels in Fishhook and Cape Point, oh, it's good. Yeah, hey, you black people, you didn't build anything, eh? What did you guys build? My father built Fishhook. He built the Cape Point. He built Wynberg. He built this damn country. And you're going to call him a suspicious black male when he walks in the same country that he built. My maternal grandfather built the N2 road. He was working there, N2. He stayed in Ndabeni, a concentration camp that was built for black people in Cape Town. Its original name was Uitvlucht, where black people were moved from white areas like Brooklyn and Milnerton, District 6, Constantia. Black people were removed from those areas, pushed to a concentration camp near what became Kwalanga. That concentration camp was called Uitvlucht. Go and check it. You will see it looks like those places with war, like Sudan. You see those refugee camps, the tents. They literally built that for my grandfather to live in. They lived in those camps. Before you could even enter, they had to take you to the deep, like a cow, and wash you because somehow you had some diseases. Even during the time of the bubonic plague, it was our people who were blamed for it. Oh no, it's these natives. Hey, it must be them. They put boards all over the road. Beware of the natives. Beware of the natives. So it's not something in the past, this apartheid thing. It's a very real thing. It's an everyday thing. You understand? It's an everyday thing. So I'm just going to answer one question. Do you reckon expropriating land without compensation would create a war? It is stolen land, though. Nah, it would not create a war. It would not create a war here in South Africa. But the war would come from outside. I promise you that. It would be used as an excuse because South Africa is not facing expropriation without compensation only. There's other things that South Africa is doing internationally that are very serious. Like, that are very serious. And there are people who are just waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. I mean, the ICC case is probably the most, dangerous thing South Africa is doing. Anything that would happen right now in South Africa, like talk of war, blah, 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 it would be probably from the outside, from people on the outside who want instability in the country. Majority of, maybe not majority, but a good number of people in South Africa don't have massive amounts of land. They don't have massive amounts of land. Do you understand? A good number. There are a few who do have massive amounts of land. Some of them do understand the need to expropriate, and I think probably they would still get compensation. I don't think the government would do without compensation. But even if it's without compensation, there's no reason for there to be a war. There's no reason at all. Like, it's not your land anyway. You understand? Yeah. So it was like reserves, like the natives in America. It was native reserves. They call it Bantustans. But the problem is now, those same Bantustans, they still want to control them. So it's like, it's not enough that we've removed you from your land, we'll put you in Bantustans, we'll still control you from there. Yeah, no, what they wanted was to control the entire continent. Cecil John Rhodes had this vision of the Cape to Cairo Imperial Project. So they wanted to own the entire continent from Cape Town to Cairo. In fact, they already were on a good trajectory doing that because they had South Africa, they had Zimbabwe, they had the countries next to Zimbabwe like Zambia, they had Tanzania, they had Kenya already. Literally. They already had those countries. So they were already on a good trajectory to get all the countries in Africa. So it was not just South Africa, they wanted every single thing. What we were gonna be and what they still view when they look at us are hewers of wood and fetchers of water. Abachweli benkuni nabakhi bamanzi. Namibia is in trouble. Namibia is in a serious problem right there. Namibia is in trouble. And you see, when the population is too agreeable, trust me, they love it. When you guys are always agreeable, oh, we are one, oh, it's a peaceful country, once they say it's a peaceful country, trust me, they love it. They love things the way they are. Thank you, Observer. Thank you so much. They love things the way they are. So basically, between 1948 and 1994, all kinds of evils are happening in South Africa. People are being captured from their houses. Thank you, everyone, for the gifts, and anyone who's going to gift in the future. I appreciate it. Please continue gifting so that we can continue the work. And remember, all the lives are still on YouTube. I post every single live on YouTube. Sandile Tukani on YouTube. Maybe there's like 30 hours worth of lives or even 50 hours. I don't know. But they're all there. Between 1948 and 1994, it was hell on earth. And it still is hell on earth for the majority of this country. Rakim is saying, I hate the saying, no DNA, just RSA. I wonder who came up with that, eh? No DNA, just RSA. I wonder who came up with that. I would like to know. I would just love to know who came up with that. But I have a feeling it might be someone who's, it might be a group that's close to Penwell the Black Pen. Anyway, I digress. Hey, no DNA, just RSA. DNA, Baba. There's no RSA here. There is no RSA. South Africa is a place where they come to extract resources, but then they realize, no, we don't even have to do the extraction of the resources. Let's get the natives to do the extraction. And then we take the resources, we build the most prestigious houses, we enjoy the life. These people just remain hewers of wood, fetchers of water. That's a very important line to understand, because hewers of wood, fetchers of water is a line in the Bible. And apartheid was heavily influenced by Afrikaner Calvinism. A lot of Calvinist doctrine to this day. You go to NG Kerk, that's Reformed, Baba. You go there on a Sunday. A lot of their doctrine is still based on that. This is this is the fatherland. This is our chosen land. These people think they are Israelites, Baba. And apparently we are Canaanites to them. This is not just in the politics. This is deeper than that. They literally think, well, they know it's not true, but that's what they are pushing. African Calvinism. These reverends who were part of the Broederbond in early days, who influenced heavily the policies of the Afrikaner government, of the National Party, a majority of that government were part of the Afrikaner Bond. They were secret society members who were influenced by Afrikaner Calvinism. A lot of them still believe that, and they teach their children to this day. To this day. No DNA, just RSA. Some of those people, they laugh when they see comments like that. They just laugh when they see comments like that. No DNA, they don't even want to mix. I remember when the former rugby captain, Siya Kolisi, was busy with his former wife now, Rachel Kolisi. Go and look for the comments there. Hey, some men were angry there. And it's not men who look like me. They were so angry, saying, why is this boy Why is this girl spoiling the seed? I mean, what was Siyakolisi thinking anyway? But Sia, they like to do things, eh? But that's not the point. The point is there's a huge religio, socio-political, ultra-extremist element in the very essence of what apartheid was. I don't know what Sia was doing, man. Hey, Lian, man, they don't listen, these guys. But there's an ultra-radical element, and this is the element that ensures and guarantees the continuity of what apartheid is. Thank you for the gift, guys. It's what ensures the continuity of what apartheid is. So, the manifestation then of Youth Day, where these people think that apartheid, Afrikaans, which they hijacked as well, because they should have spoken a mixture of Dutch, German, and French and English. They hijacked the language that was spoken by the slaves as well. And some of the natives, they hijacked it. And it's crazy to see that really it was not really spoken by them. It was written in Arabic with a strong influence of the Cape Malay people. Hijacked that damn thing, took Africans, made it theirs, called themselves Afrikaners, which is a name that they hijacked as well. Yeah, guys. Yeah. No, it's too much now. They hijacked even the name Afrikaners. You understand what I'm saying? Anyway, what you have now is the enforcement of Afrikaans language, their version of Afrikaans, by the way, their version. They enforced it as a medium of teaching and learning. Now think about it. We have centuries and millennia of speaking our native languages. And you want to come and enforce a language that is not mine. I have my own that I've been speaking, okay? The people who lost their language because they were slaves, they have every right to speak Afrikaans. But I have my own. I don't need to speak Afrikaans. I can speak my own language. So why am I being taught now in another person's language? Do you know what that means? It means that person has every control over what my children are taught. Every single control over literally the future generations. And this is where the problem is. To this day, native South Africans will fight tooth and nail to send their children to former African school or former English medium schools. And I get the reasons. I don't think there's a problem with that. But if you can afford St. John's College fees, if you can afford Westerford fees, if you can afford Bishop Diocesan's fees, if you can afford Parktown High fees, if you can afford, Weinberg boys, Weinberg girls, surely you can afford to ensure that that child doesn't lose their indigenous language. Now these kids, they go to these former Model C schools, which is fine, because then they need to learn and understand more about how things operate, right? But then they lose the sense of being. So apartheid is happening without apartheid being enforced now. Now there's an interesting twist to it. It's not even the kids' fault. It's the parents. The parents know better. I just saw a video a few hours ago. This little boy, young Zulu boy, the mother speaking to the boy in English. The boy keeps on replying in proper isiZulu. And the mother's like, Haibo, why don't you speak English? The boy's like, ngumZulu mina. Like proudly, I am Zulu. And the mother feels like there's something wrong with the child. What level of delusion is that? It's the delusion of the highest order. And trust me, nothing wrong with speaking another language. It's absolutely good. I'm a lover of languages. I learn languages every day. I can go on and talk about the languages of ancient Sumeria and ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Babylon, blah, blah, blah. I love languages. But my language comes first. Because my language is my rock, my fortress. If I don't understand something in another language, There's no way I can't understand it if I bring it back to my own language. And that should be our basis. Our basis. Yeah, we fight tooth and nail to have black people, natives who speak English. Hey, especially English. Nowadays, even Africans, people don't care about Africans. English, yo. Hey, English, hey, our people love English, yo. And I get it, man. Back in the day, it made economic sense to speak these languages. It meant better opportunities. Doesn't mean that anymore. You send your kid to a formal model school, they come back and work at ShopRite. They come back and sell chips there by the traffic lights. Trust me, they come back and become assistant teachers. Some of them even with degrees, medical doctor degrees. They are assistant teachers, earning cents every month because the system is crooked. It's not true. The system is not real, eh? How you go to university for 4 years, you come back, you become an intern for 2 years. What the hell is that? And then as an intern, you become a junior, you train someone of a different, the opposite. You train them for 1 year, 2 years. By the third year, they're your manager. Wonder Boy, you right. Now we don't understand things until they're translated to English. It's so sad, So sad. Anyway, so the youth of 1976 then ends up protesting the whole decree, making Afrikaans a language of instruction. They wanted to protest it, they get killed for it, and we have Youth Day today. But it doesn't end there. There are many other things. There's Women's Day and all that. So people had to constantly fight. That's why I was saying, even the protests at universities, roads must fall, fees must fall. Because after roads must fall, the statue was taken out. Some of the building names were changed. For example, Smart Hall at UCT. We had another building, the biggest hall, basically the auditorium, was called Jamison Hall. They changed it now to Sarah Bartman. So they did some change. Hey, people went crazy, man. The stakeholders, they went crazy. Like, why are you changing the names? Do you see that blindness? That they are privileged and benefit from a system of unjust brutality. They're so blind to it, and I get it. I get it. I get the blindness to brutality because the brutality benefits them. But I would have preferred if that brutality was done in their own land. The problem I have with this system is that they want to do it in another person's land and they want that person to keep quiet. That is absolutely perverted. It is the purest form of perversion I've seen. How do you go to another person's land, SA that land, steal from that land and expect that person to smile while you're doing it? Oh, wow, you SAing my land so well. You great man of God. No, we can't do that. We can't smile while we are pillaging our land and resources. It's not going to happen. We are going to fight back, and I don't care what happens. Because our spirit doesn't die. It's delusion, man. I really don't get it. You see, if apartheid, for example, and colonialism was happening in Europe amongst Europeans, I wouldn't even have a say about it because it's nothing to do with me. But you can't come to my land and want to establish an Orania. No, it can't be. It cannot be. S. Dweller, I lost my uncle in 1976, Soweto uprising. Our condolences to you. Condolences. This is exactly why we must keep the battle. Because people lost family members. Real life loss. Not something from TV, not something from the remote past. It's something that's very real. Amanda saying they never did isiXhosa at school and they regret. You're not the only one. Many people did not do their languages, eh? It was looked down on for some people. For some people, it was uncool to do their languages. Now, the least you could hope for is to learn from people like us who at least have some level of knowledge, some level of knowledge. I know people who went to schools could not even speak any native language. When they get to university, it gets even worse because they feel alienated. They feel alienated. You understand? So we cannot just keep quiet, guys. I'm sorry, we can't just keep quiet. The top three in South Africa in terms of language. So the most language speakers speak isiZulu and then isiXhosa. Those are the top two languages. Now the numbers for these languages are not really updated, but yeah, the last census that was done, it's isiZulu and then isiXhosa. And then they say it's Afrikaans, which is the third most spoken. The reason why Afrikaans is the third most spoken is because Afrikaans is spoken by three groups: colored people, black people, and white people as well. You see, yeah. So it's those three languages. But also, man, the methods of census are not very reliable. So I don't really work with that. But definitely, isiZulu and isiXhosa are definitely the top two, and then Afrikaans. So yeah, but generally isiZulu and isiXhosa are interchangeable very easily. So if you speak those languages, I think most people will be able to communicate with you wherever you are in the country. But also it would be nice to learn maybe Sesotho or Setswana. I think Sesotho is easier. Setswana is a bit difficult, I can promise you that. So yeah. Orania has to be hated. In fact, Orania is another debt that they still have to pay because Orania itself is built literally on stolen land. There are families who were kicked out of that place, For Orania to have been built, there are families that were kicked out. But Orania is not even the only town like that. It's the most well known. There are many others like Orania. Many others have a religious undertone to them. They've got this Israelite in the desert kind of approach to it. They think they're in the desert. Oh, they are literally acting like they are the victims here. So anyway, between 1948 to 1994, you have that system. And I'm not even scratching the surface in describing how bad that system was. It's not even a surface. Remember, Loli, the government. You think the government are not compromised? Look at the people they honor. The people they honor themselves very, very, very questionable. I could say things, man, even about the loved heroes who died without being presidents. Some of them, someone spends years in the jungle and then they come back, they're driving a Mercedes Benz. You start to ask yourself some stuff, but some of these people worked with the enemy heavily, and then last minute they want to be honorable, and then the enemy kills them. The government was never trustworthy to begin with. Never. Still not. Remember Elon Musk's father, that guy, that PDF guy whose SAs, miners, he was busy bragging there that he bought Ramaphosa's Bentley, I think. Do you understand that they've got personal relationship with these people? They have personal relationships. They go to their houses to sleep in. It's almost like some weird occultic ritualistic. The Menels, the Oppenheimers, the Rothschilds, just to name a few. Uh, uh, Brother, I think I can give you a chance to say something.
I'm just here learning.
If you have something to say, feel free.
Yeah, I'm just here learning.
All
My
right, brother.
curiosity. I'm just like, I won't say much because I'm learning. I'm not there. I'm in America, so I can't have nothing to say but to learn and help.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, brother. All right. So basically, maybe to relate it back to America, think about Jim Crow, ne? The things they used to do, the lynching they used to do, exactly the same here. There was so much hanging of people here. But now the difference with Jim Crow is that here we are the native, so it's different from like being taken from another place, etc. Right? So it's Jim Crow plus the Native American reserves, all focused on one group of people. Gentrification, native reserve, Jim Crow, lynching, and all that. If you're a native and a white kid accuses you of something in those days, you don't have a chance. Like you have a zero chance to even win that case. You understand? Anyway, I see. I don't know if you want to say something. You can say something.
No, I'm listening. I'm saying, yeah, I
All right,
understand
all
where you're
right,
getting with that.
all right. No problem. No problem. So I see some people say they never TikTok. TikTok has been monitoring me. I don't even care anymore. I don't even care. They can go to hell if they want. Someone was saying, Amanda was saying that they never learned isiXhosa. Let me tell you something. I went to an isiXhosa medium, well, English medium school, to an English medium school, ne? Hey, but shame my teachers, they didn't play by that game. They taught in their languages. So I did learn isiXhosa and English. Bit of Afrikaans, but then, yeah, stopped. We used to go to mathematics Olympiads, like these competitions between schools, like national competitions and all that. I had an incident. I had an incident happen where we were gonna write a maths Olympiad exam, and a group of white boys pushed one of them to my group that I was working with. That was the very first time I had a weird interaction with white people, a racist interaction, because I don't understand why you're gonna push another boy towards me and then they just laugh it off. So sorry, man. I was like, that's interesting. But anyway, I ended up being in the top 20 of the Olympiad. And Olympiads are not easy at all. Olympiads are international standard maths, so very difficult. So I got a distinction for the Olympiad, and I was in high school, but we went to write at university. I got the thing. So yeah, their racism didn't sway me off. That was the first incident. Second one, and now I'm in Joburg. And as I'm in Joburg, it's around 5 p.m. People are coming back from work. I'm coming back from an appointment that I had. I'm walking up the road. A little young boy who's colored is on his bike coming down. He nearly hits this other old African lady. Guess what this lady says in anger? She calls him a Bopochan, a baboon. So I go and like, no, old lady, you can't call a boy that. The boy probably like 9 or 10. I'm like, you can't call a child a baboon. What's wrong with you? You know what that African lady says? She's like, oh, even you're a Bopochan, okay? So it's the two of us now. This boy is watching me. I'm fighting with this lady, like, don't call a boy that, blah, blah, blah. I used to be quite hot headed. I can confront you like right there and then. Anyway, she's like, you people, you don't like God, you people. And I can see she has like a cross, like maybe you're the one who needs prayers. And she was so like she couldn't even look at me. She felt like, oh, this disease is gonna come to me. Then I realized, we're dealing with psychiatric patients here. And the community I stayed in is a proper Afrikaner suburb with the Dutch Reformed Church. So that doctrine, there it manifests again. It manifests again. You understand what I'm saying? So anyway, I've had a couple of those experiences. So they force you to go back and actually learn, okay, what's happening in this country? Because I thought we're free. Why are people calling other people monkeys and baboons? At the core of it is a white supremacist, radical, ultra racist undertone, ultra racist mindset. But this mindset is based upon fragility. They are afraid of our existence. Oh my goodness. Okay, let me just answer some question. Have you ever thought of going to the Penwell's Convo show? Yeah, I'm ready. I think I need to go now. I think Penwell needs me because there are some things that need to be addressed very quickly. I would go any day. I'm not good at maths. Oh no, maths is my thing. For me, it's my language. Mathematics for me, I love it. Science, everything science, maths. When I went to do my first year, I did a Bachelor of Business Science in Actuarial Science at UCT 2015. So yeah, maths, computer science, programming, those kind of things. It's kind of what I do. But then I went further to do finance and investments and stuff, and then back to programming. And that's the thing about being good at maths, and you end up not knowing what to do exactly. One moment you want to be a mathematician, the other moment you want to be a statistician. So yeah, but yeah, I'm in IT now. Anyway, I would go to I would go to Penwell's channel. I don't mind. Lorna is like, I would buy a car before anyone who'd racist me. Yeah, I mean, I know the anger that you feel when you experience a racist incident, but you realize that it's not actually it's not like a standalone thing, That racist incidents that's going to happen to you is not a standalone thing. There are many others that are going to happen and many others that are happening to other people. And then you realize that it's actually bigger and it needs a smarter way to deal with. It needs a group to deal with. And perhaps maybe channels like this, which are going to inspire other channels and other platforms and stuff like that. So I think we're in the right direction. You sound very learned. Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. I try, I try to learn things. The visitor is also good at maths, physics, and chemistry and accounting. I love it. I love it. We have to explore those technical and analytical fields. Very important. It's what drives society. I thought you were a historian. Well, I am a historian. I remember in high school we were learning about the theorem of Pythagoras. Not me going to learn about who Pythagoras was, what he might have looked like. So even in accounting, I went to learn about the origin of accounting all the way back to Egypt, to the scribes, looking at some of the formulas of the Egyptian people when they would store things, store maize, store this. So obviously, I didn't just learn these things without understanding where they come from, maths, science, and all that. I still remember the names of the physicists and the chemists and all these different biologists, the physicists, your Galileo Galileis, your Niels Bohr, your John Nash. So we learned about those people. But history is my passion. I learned greatly. The likes of Herodotus, the likes of Flavius Josephus, some good history right there. So I am a historian at heart. But anyway, back to the topic. There's a question: what would be the at least 4 totem of SA? So in SA we have totems of animals and other cosmic bodies like the sky, etc. For example, amongst the Sotho-Tswana speaking groups, there's the totem of the crocodile, Kwena. Totem of the crocodile, Kwena. So we have that totem in South Africa. Amongst Nguni speaking people, and a similar totem with the same name, same animal, the crocodile, but pronounced differently is Ngwenya. And then there's another totem, which is my totem, the baboon, Mfene. in the Nguni languages, but in the Sotho languages, it's Tswene. So the people of that baboon are called Ba Tsweneng. That's the second one. And then another totem that we have is like the elephant in Ndlovu, or Toung, and then the lion totem Tau, on Tau. So the totems you'll find across the different languages, but it's the same totems. I'm a data analyst working in the UK right now. I don't know if I want to go to SA. Some things just upset me about SA, and most of my people seem to be so asleep. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in South Africa are in deep sleep, and this is why we have to be here online, because you can't just talk to anyone who's next to you. You're gonna lose your mind. We have to be here online. Find each other. That's the key. Find your people. Find people who resonate in the same frequency as you. Trust me, it's going to be much healthier for your mind as well. Find people. We don't have to agree with these people. It's not a cult, at least yet. Because I've seen some other groups, they're starting to show signs of being cults now. Like they can't disagree with the so-called leader of the year. So a bit scary right there. But yeah, no, this is not a cult. I try to just, keep it very professional as well. So I think I've done enough talking about what I am, what I'm not. Let's deal with the subject. But yeah, so between 48 and 94, you have apartheid. And the reason why I'm not passing the apartheid period, because it's so many things that happened. So many things. Children went missing and nobody knows where they went. Family members went missing. Nobody knows where they went. Police can just kick doors and enter your house at night, and nobody can explain where those people end up, and you never find them again. We had massacres. If in fact, the people who go and say there's a white G side here, they go to Trump, the golden Goliath of America, Donald Trump, the guy with a little ego, fragile ego. They go to Trump, the 49, together with their scammers called AfriForum, who survive by scamming money off of their followers by convincing them that they're fighting for them, but they're not. They just need money to be donated every month. So they need to be victims of some sort. It's called Swart Gafar in South Africa, which means the black danger. It was a tactic that was used by the apartheid government to keep people afraid. Because fear works, man. Fear is powerful. A lot of churches use it, making people afraid of the devil. Such that people don't even read the Bible for themselves. They're just afraid of the devil. Oh no, the devil. Oh, you must give money to the church. The devil is coming. Even politics are the same. The apartheid government had a strong propaganda that, reverberated in white people's minds 24/7, called Swart Gafar, the black danger. Hey, they made white people afraid of things that did not exist. The group of people who killed the most people in the history of humanity are afraid of some natives who don't have food to eat, who don't have cars, who don't have guns. The people who own guns in the country are afraid of the people who don't have guns, who are gonna fight with sticks and cow shields. It just doesn't make sense to me, but it works because people have to be afraid. But the fear goes even deeper. It's not just afraid of the group of people, but rather the afraid of their own actions, afraid of themselves. When you're such a bad person, you've done so many things and you love it, a lot of the times you end up being afraid of facing that truth, that you actually love the bad things you do. Even serial killers and people who do a lot of SAing of women, they're afraid of facing the truth about themselves. They never, if you ask them questions deep enough to get to that level of, do you love it? Do you love seeing pain in other people's face? It's rare that they actually admit it. They'd rather flip the script and be the victims. Oh no, you people made us like this. So they had this Swart Gafar propaganda. What is this? AfriForum uses as their modus operandi. They will take anything, even if you are breathing, as a black South African or non-white South African, even if you are breathing, they'll take a snap of that. You see the way they breathe. This is the way that so and so used to breathe, and after that they kill us. They're gonna kill us. Look at their breath. Look at their breath. Oh my goodness! And they will believe it because they must not be accountable. They must believe it. They can't exist with themselves. They must believe that someone is out to get them, but no one is out to get them. Most native people don't give a damn about that. Most native people just want their land and food to eat at night and peace. And peace. The reason why South Africans have not gone for revenge killings, mainly is the government, man. Remember, native South Africans believed in the government. They believe that the government is going to make the change for them. So the South Africans who actually experienced firsthand, majority of the time, believe that, okay, look, the government is going to make the change. There were so many promises: free education, free this, free that, free this, free that. And unfortunately, that government did not deliver. What the government did is to take the prominent leaders that the people listen to, silence them with giving them privilege. Now, privilege and comfort means that you have something to lose if you go against the powers that be. If you go against the powers that be, you have something to lose. So even the leaders who used to inspire people became the enemies now. You understand? So people just lost morale. And that's the main thing right now. Even right now, when bad things are happening, South African natives are not angry enough because some of them have things to lose now. Some of them have tasted a bit of comfort, and they wouldn't be willing to sacrifice their comfort for their temporary comfort for long-term freedom. They're not willing to do that. It would take another event to actually awaken South Africans that yenina, yenina. You understand? It will take something. And a lot of South Africans, even to this day, who talk about these issues, they don't talk about these issues because they feel they always spoke about them. Some South Africans, things happen to them. Things happen to them, and then they see the true face of the people who run this country economically. A lot of South Africans have to experience bad things at work. They have to experience poverty firsthand. They have to experience inconvenience economically. They have to see it. But you don't have to do that. All you need to do is to walk at any rich neighborhood during the day, or at a mall near a fancy neighborhood. Go there at 12 p.m. on a weekday and see who's at the restaurants. Go to any mall near a fancy neighborhood and see there who's at the restaurants at 12 p.m. midday. If that doesn't make you think, nothing else will. Or go at the most awkward times of the month, on the 12th of the month or on the 23rd of the month, and see who's filling the restaurants. Most South African natives only go to enjoy those things on the first 5 days after month end. First 5 days of the month. After that, they're broke for the whole month. So you don't need some event, some massive event to see the reality. You just have to drive sometimes. Just drive around and see who's walking. Drive around and see who's walking and see who's driving, and you will see the reality. Maybe if Gauteng is too deceiving for you, go to Cape Town and see who's walking and driving in Cape Town. Go to Eastern Cape and see who's walking and see who's driving. Go to Northern Cape, see who's walking and see who's driving. Even when it rains. It's true. The Trump Elon Musk AfriForum saga should have woken up most people, but it didn't. Absolutely, Ndabezit. There's a good reason why our people are drowning in alcohol, in beverage, sorry. There's a good reason because They want to stay dizzy. Some they even confess it here online. I just want to be dizzy all the time. They confess it. We must believe those people who confess that they want to be dizzy 24/7 because it's difficult to stay sober. You understand? It's very difficult to stay sober. Let me just read through some of the questions. I think I missed a few. So South Africans basically thought, when am I going to talk about Bakoni? I think Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm going to be talking about that. Yeah, Tuesday and Wednesday. There was another question. So 1948 is the time of when it was so called. No. It was disbanded 1994. My brother Ramutev, 1994, like in the 90s, just now. That's when apartheid was so called disbanded, not 1948. 1948 is when the Afrikaner National Party officially became the ruling party in the country. And they took apartheid, which already existed by then, and they took it and they did affirmative action to make sure the Afrikaners become rich. They become the nobility of South Africa. This is why you have Rupert as the richest man in Africa today. This is why you have Koos Becker as one of the richest people in South Africa. So between 48 and 94, they were looting the state resources. But tell you what, between 94 and 2025, they became way richer than they ever were under apartheid. So democracy made them even more richer. So it was so-called disbanded in 1994, when Nelson Mandela became the first president, and then Thabo Mbeki, and then Jacob Zuma, and then Cyril Ramaphosa. We don't know who's going to be president next. It could be Steenhuisen. It could be Helen Zille. Nobody knows. How they got richer. Oh, remember now they had access to consumers. They had access to way more consumers now. Remember, they couldn't really sell to black people because there was a lot of limitations to operating in townships. So they got access to more consumers now. And why consumers? Because black people were not even allowed to run businesses, run real businesses. Yeah, well. So black people have never been able to run a real business. I'm saying like the average black youth, if you pick them up from the street right now, give them 10,000 rand, tell them to run a hot dog stand in the middle of the mall, most of them are going to fail because they've never ever been exposed to entrepreneurship altogether. Why? There were laws to make sure that they don't. So after 94, companies like ShopRite, Pick and Pay, Ackermans, Pep, all these massive companies, they were able to access a large pool of consumers, massive pool of consumers. You understand? Even the so-called township economy, much of it, they still depend on the real white South African economy to buy stuff, you know. Yeah, no, after Ramaphosa, they got so rich, and not just rich, they got bold. Yo, hey, these people became bold, man. Look at AfriForum after Ramaphosa. AfriForum became so bold. And you can see like they have so much influence in the country, but they don't even represent that a big number of people. You wonder why? It seems to me like something else is happening. In South Africa during World War One and World War Two, South Africa was involved. At some point, South Africa was on the side of Nazi Germany. At some point, they were on the side of Nazi Germany. By South Africa, I mean the national part, the white people who were running South Africa. They were part of. They were definitely fighting in World War One, World War Two, but they were not enough. The Europeans were not enough. They needed native South Africans. So you had native South Africans serving in World War One and World War Two. In fact, some of the native South Africans from the Eastern Cape drowned. Their ship drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. That ship was called SS Mandy. It drowned with a lot of men from the Eastern Cape, but also from other parts, but majority from the Eastern Cape. We even had a poem called Ukuzika Kukamendi. Ewe lonto yinto yalonto. Thina nto zaziyo sithi bekumelwe. Sithethe engqondweni sithi kufanelwe. Ukuba bekungenje bekungayi kulunga. Ngoko ke sotashe kwaqala ukulunga. Lenqana umendi ewe ibithwele, etc., etc., etc. That's a poem that was dedicated to those men who were going to that war. A lot of native South Africans were there. They were helping with supplies. They were not allowed to carry a gun. Imagine you go into a war of warmongers who are brutal to each other. And you're not even seen as a human being when you go to this war. They don't even allow you to carry a gun. But a lot of native South Africans went there because they thought, at least if I can go, some of them were promised that after the war, then they would be able to compete for jobs, opportunities would be open for them. So it was enticing for them to go to war. It was enticing. It made sense, like, oh damn. It's like the people now from countries like Uganda and Kenya, those ladies were enticed to go to Dubai because of the job prospects that they're told about. But when they get there, they become slaves. Right now, bunch of women from East Africa are slaves in the Middle East. So it was the same thing that happened to our people. But now after the war, a lot of the Nazis, some of them came to South Africa, including Elon Musk's grandfather. He was a Nazi from Canada. He was a Nazi technocrat. He came to South Africa because he found wow, South Africa is a good place for Nazis. And it makes sense. It really is a good place for Nazis, Shem. We have a lot of Nazis here in South Africa to this day. Even so-called white South Africans, a lot of them, they love Nazism. They love the Führer, Adolf. So a lot of them came here. A lot of them, even more, went to Argentina and the USA. The scientists and all that. But also not just the Nazis, the Jewish people as well. Some of them are a problem for us here in South Africa. They're a big problem. I'm going to include two of them who are a massive problem. They love apartheid so much. Helen Zille is one of the Jewish people who came back, who came this side. She's a Jewish descendant, but she loves apartheid, which is interesting because she always supports apartheid online. Oh, apartheid was good. It came with development. People could say the same argument for the Holocaust because a lot of companies, Adidas, Volkswagen, that's how they pronounce it, VW, that company was a Nazi company. A lot of them worked with Nazis, IBM, Those people were working with Nazis, and these companies have had massive improvements for human beings, as they like to put it. They've contributed to human advancement. So we could say then that using that same argument that colonialism was not all that bad, we could say the Holocaust was not all that bad, actually. We could say the age cost that the Jewish people experienced was not all that bad. Using the exact same context, exact same argument that Helen Zille is using. Because she always says, oh no, colonialism and apartheid, guys, come on, we built roads, we built this, we built that, we built that. Well, the Führer there, the man with the beard, he did the same thing. The man with the mustache, he did the same thing. He built so much. No, there were crimes against humanity, but I'm just saying, using that distorted argument, she came to South Africa because her people were being oppressed in Germany, but when she gets here, the oppression of our people must mean less. The oppression of our people must mean less. We're not going to play like that. She uses that argument against us that apartheid was good. Then the Führer did a good thing there. We're not gonna play like that. TikTok they can ban me. I don't care. No one is gonna say the death of our people was a joke, and nobody does anything to them. The government just keeps on smiling like some good house Negroes, some bloody slaves. They just keep quiet. We're not gonna do that. We ain't gonna play such games. And things that happened in Germany, they've got nothing to do with us. Europeans must deal with them. Here we've got a group of people who come to our land. They come to our land, they take our stuff, and they oppress our people, and we must say, oh no, it was good, they built roads. What does a road benefit me with because I don't have land? Our grandparents and our parents and our brothers, they've finished their entire lives. Their lives are gone because they were carrying heavy stuff. You know, my dad was working in the mines. To this day, he has asthma. Ever since we met Europeans, we have been dying every day. It's enough. Siapela. You are finishing us. Anyway, this is for my people. We have to help ourselves. We have to help ourselves. The South African middle class are delusional because just one salary, they are gone. They will be homeless. They will absolutely be homeless. Don't worry, most of them will experience it. They will be homeless. Their salary doesn't even last 10 days. Their salary doesn't even last 10 days. So Helen Zille, then she came from Germany because her ancestors were being oppressed there. She's Jewish. And then you have Rob Herzog as well. He does the exact same thing as Helen Zille. Rob Herzog, his ancestors are Russian Jews. It's just amazing to me. It's amazing that the Jewish people are at the forefront of supporting apartheid in South Africa. I do know there were a couple of Jewish people who were in the struggle, fighting, blah, blah, blah. Your Helen Suzmans, your your Joe Slovos. You see, those ones were more on the communist side. Yeah. But right now in 2025, no man. People like Rob Herzog and Helen Zille need to be exposed. I genuinely do not understand what's so difficult. Yeah, Gil Marcus. You know what you can do if you struggle to understand the reality of South Africa? If you're a white South African, you could literally just go visit a black family, sit down and listen to them. Just one black family, you realize, hey, I know I'm living in heaven. A lot of black South Africans, not just black, poor native South Africans. A lot of them have to wake up at 4 a.m. My very own father used to do that. Wake up 4 a.m., go catch a train all the way to Wynberg. You're still going to carry cement and bricks and build these fancy houses here. All the way to Fishhook. You're going to come back when the sun is already set. And what do you get at the end of the day? Nothing. Because a lot of those companies, those mining and construction companies, they operated in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They didn't even have to pay pension monies. And then somebody's going to like, oh no, you guys didn't build anything. Why didn't you people innovate? You people have not built anything, eh? We built this country. You people are just destroying. When our people didn't even have access to water and electricity. And you know, the ANC, they are just a bunch of idiots. I don't even want to mention them. But some people have access to electricity, internet, Wi-Fi, telephones, cell phones, TVs. Kids can go to school and get some form of education. Although the kids themselves are not taught the value of education in their own families. Because I could literally get the same textbook as that damn kid who's not serious about her future and his future. I could get the same textbook and come with 10 times value than that child. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about because I come from that environment. There's also that, but that's for us to discuss now. In some places where the government has done really good work, built schools, built police stations, built clinics, provide the resources, there are places like that. Not all of them, but there are. Especially in like more developed townships. Schools are there and they're sufficient. It's just that the kids don't want to listen. But that's for us to handle. I'm going to allow the people to speak. I'm also going to drop in like a few minutes, 20 minutes or so, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. But I'm going to allow the brother who joined to have a say, Uzulu, to have a say. I'm not going to be long today. I just wanted to say something because it's youth. It was Youth Day. It's already another day now. Zulu, Hlubi,
Sanibona.
my brother.
Cha. Sisikhuleka kubo bonke abantu. Hayi ngilalele lapha. Hayi kuningi. Mhlambe into ebengifuna ukuyibuza, mhlambe nabantu abakhona la benganceda. Ngoba ngiyabuka nje ukuthi kule mpilo esiphilayo njengamanje, and with all the difficulties that we are facing, do you think ukuthi our people are ready, I mean, to fight for the land and to fight for what is right for the black people, since it looks like everyone is how can I put it, is loyal into their lifestyle? Because mawubuka nje yabona njengamanje.
Yeah.
Ngihlala eAlexandria. Ngimtshele with ama difficulties esiwafaceayo eAlexandria. Leyo muntu engazange ngizwe ukuthi ngithini. Uma ngithi manje i-country ayibe stand still, kungaphumi umuntu ungenzi lutho. Ngibuka nje umuntu ohlanyayo, nje umuntu ongazi ukuthi uthini, nje umuntu ovilaphayo, ufuna abe ngiyaphuma ngiyovilapha. Instead ukuthi angitshela ukuthi senze njani, uzongitshela ukuthi hayi angithi uyabona ukuthi ama foreigners asebenza kanzima, uhlulwa yini wena ukuthi nawe uhambe emakethe uyothenga utamatisi ubuye uzodayisa la. Kodwa i-issue engibhekene nayo noma inkinga esibhekene nayo, it's bigger than that ukuthi mina ngihambe ngemakethe ngiyothenga utamatisi. So do you think because sengibabuka kakhulu abantu abaningi, like for instance here in Durban kunomhlanga kune estate abathi umhlanga izimbali estate. People from umhlanga and izimbali estate, they tend to think more, I mean they think much better than those people who stay kwaMashu naseMlazi. You come to Joburg, uthola ukuthi abantu abahlala eVelge, Little Falls bacabanga ukuthi bacabanga kangcono kunabantu abahlala eSoweto. You go to elokhuzaneni eMidrand, Waterfall, abantu bakhona bacabanga ukuthi they are in a better position to think than those people who abahlala eThembisa. Same thing again with people from townships. They think they can think better than those who come from the farms, the rural areas. So now, how do we close all those gaps, since we also have those lower class, middle class, and upper class who are very loyal into their lifestyle?
All right.
Ayonjabula nje uqeda ukukhuluma ngama salaries ukuthi umuntu uyazi ukuthi uyahola end of the month, and I can't tell umuntu oholayo u25,000 of the month ukuthi ndoda asiyeke manje yonke lento lena ukuya emsebenzini, asilwe silwele izwe lethu. Umuntu into oqala icabanga le car that he pays end of the month, the bond le akanayo, abantwana bakhe abahambisa e-private school, ukudla kudlayo, the drinks that he drinks, or ma-gatherings nabangani bakhe, and the membership yelokhuzana ye-gym, Virgin Active, Planet Fitness. Ucabanga zonke lezi zinto lezo bese yabuka nje ukuthi ayi umakhe uyangibhedela. I can't let go of all these things, I understand. I would rather die here than going there. Sigcine siba ngazathi siba weak ekuthenini we are not asihlangene asikwazi ukuhlangana because i-system yona itself and izinto i-system eziprovidayo kubantu, it has made people most people babe disloyal to their own and become loyal into the lifestyle of the system. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you so much for your submissions. I think you see what you were saying. There's I think Lorna, I'm not sure, who are saying that use UK, yeah, they're in the UK and they don't want to come back. They are contemplating, but they don't think they want to come back because most people are inert they are and how just I think what you are raising is a similar sentiment, and I think that sentiment is going to be general amongst every single South African native who sees what's happening. And you look at your fellow people like they don't give a damn. Trust me, we will not be able to awaken every South African because some are happy first and foremost. It's not new. Even during apartheid, there was 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million South Africans who would be selected by the system, given some dumb benefits like a house, allowed to own some old car, and being used as a impi for the system. And those people would be loyal to the system because of some of the comfort they had. You understand? They would be loyal to the system, and it happens. This is what we call classism, where one class thinks they're better than another. You mentioned Guti, people who are in suburbia, whether in the Midrand area, Bryanston area, in Johannesburg, will think that they are much more entitled to opinion, and their opinion is entitled to being listened to more than people from Alex or Deep Kloof. But also people from Alex or Deep Kloof will think ukuthi their opinion matters more than people from Emakhaya. That's classism, but it's delusional. Because in reality is that ziyakhala macala, uyabona? Even those people in Midrand, even those people in Midrand, it's them who end up showing up online with Capitec cards asking for donations when things are not nice their side. It's them who show up online asking for donations. It's them who show up online asking for people to sign petitions. You understand? Asking people to sign petitions because, oh no, the boss is abusing them, this or that. Because first and foremost, no, you cannot think from a mindset of your own situation. It's a group thing. So everything must be contextualized. We are 60 million people, 50 million of which, are native people in the country. Out of that 50 million, a good 40 million live in poverty. So if I earn 40K, 50K, 60K a month, I'm absolutely the exception. I'm not an average South African. So my opinions should not even matter like that. You understand? My opinions should not even matter like that. Thank you. Thank you for the gift. Because I'm the exception. I don't represent the average South African. Only if, and it happens, only if I understand what it means to be poor. And even though I might have been able to cross that line, that poverty line, and earn over 50K, even people who earn 50K. Nowadays, guys, it's tough. Even people who earn over 80K a month, especially those with children and bayakhala. You understand? So, yes, I think it's delusion and just greed and self-interest that makes people think that they are better off born. You are not better off because you speak English every day and you drive some Suzuki Swift to and from work, which you pay 7,000 rand for every month. You're not better off because you drive a Haval H2. You're not better off. Trust me. One mistake, you get retrenched from that company. 2 to 3 months maximum. After that, you are poor. You are back to poverty like everybody else. And until some people experience that, they will never be able to understand the problem and delusion that comes with classism. So classism is not going to help us because what we want is a solution that crosses the line of class. And that solution is for people to be able to help themselves. And the best way for South Africans to be able to help themselves is through fixing the problems of the past. Fixing the problem of the past, people need to have land. There is no question. People need to be able to get funding for businesses. Real funding. I'm not talking about 10,000 Rand from NYDA and IDC. I'm talking about real funding, real access to financial resources. When you go applying for a loan, it shouldn't be based on your race or your address. Oh, this one is from Kaelija. Yeah, it's a high risk area. No, look at the business. Is it going to succeed or not? Do we want this business to succeed? So I think the fight must be double-edged. There must be a fight that's directed towards the government and their allies in the private sector. Government and private sector, same thing. Then there must be a fight that's directed towards Abantu bethu, our people. We must awaken them, and then we must actually put money where our mouth is. We must put money where our mouth is. I must wear something that I know is gonna put food in the table of my people. I must book an Airbnb on booking.com that I know is in a place where is most likely run by our people. I'm not saying people must drop their standards. If you want to be in a nice fancy suburb, you can go to a nice fancy suburb. You don't have to go to Mlazi to book a place. You can book there, but at least it must be a place that's going to put back into your people. So we must be, I see you, Brother Ramutev, I'm going to give you a chance. We must be very intentional with even how we do business. We must be intentional. Like, you don't have to buy vegetables at Woolies all the time. I understand maybe some things you may want to buy at one place, but there are things that you can actually literally go buy from Abantu Bagiti on the streets, Kumama, Ekonen. Buy tomatoes from there, and they are way nicer, by the way. Way nicer. You see someone from Limpopo, they have mangoes. Buy from them. Don't buy green mangoes from checkers that you don't even know how long they've been there. You see avocado there, buy. In fact, forget about buying. How about you sell? And I allow it on my live. If you want to sell something on my live, just pop me a message. If it's something like you sell soursop leaves, you sell herbs, indigenous herbs, umhlonyane, you understand? You must sell. These are the kind of things we must sell. Someone say we must go back to our culture. We don't have to only sell burgers and chips. We must sell imihlonyane, package umhlonyane, package what is this thing? Intelez. We must sell these things for our people. You understand? Moringa. Hi guys. Brother Ramutev, you can say what you want to say, then I'm gonna close off.
No problem. So my question is now, what is the political structure? Is it based off of how you say prime minister status or like democracy status? Meaning like y'all have mayors, senators, things like that, like in the state. Because that's, for me, as I'm listening, like I wonder if the people are really trying to fight for those spots so they can start actually making the changes with their mayors and senators. And because y'all have, I don't know if y'all have it, but I don't know if y'all statuses is like, president style, like how America is, or is it president style, like UK prime minister style?
Yeah, okay. So South Africa is a parliamentary republic, right? It is a constitutional parliamentary republic. So we have a constitution, which is the highest law of the land, and we have a parliament, which is the house where policies are discussed and all that. And we have a sovereign. We have a sovereign leader, a president. We don't have a prime minister. We have a president, and then the president has ministers. So the president needs to select a cabinet. The cabinet is going to have multiple portfolios looking at different aspects of the country. It could be justice, defense, state security, agriculture, art and recreation, sports, fisheries, etc. Those portfolios are generally overseen by ministers. Ministers report directly to the president. And then in good old South African style, we've got deputy ministers, which are generally unnecessary, generally just there to chow money, you know. Now, the problem in South Africa is not even necessarily that structure. The problem in South Africa is that the way presidents are selected, you don't actually necessarily select the president. You vote for a political party. You don't vote for a president in the country. The party selects the president. So they choose a candidate. So before we can vote for the party themselves choose presidential candidates. So presidential candidates compete within their parties, and only party members and the senior leadership, blah, 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 select who their candidate is. Then that candidate is going to be the one representing the party in the election ballot. So when we go to vote, then we vote for the party. There's a lot of parties in the country because it is a democracy. And then the country that wins then is the one that selects the president and the minister. And then if, let's say, the party doesn't get a decisive majority, you're going to have a coalition or a government of national unity, which none of those things are real. But yeah, I see you have another question.
Yeah, kind of. It's more. I wanted to continue on. I wanted you to continue on what you're saying, but what I'm getting from what I'm hearing is that the wow. So hold on. Let me get my anger down real quick. So what you're telling me is that y'all do not have y'all don't have a structure to the whole entire state. It's either you vote for whoever the minister is, and then the minister is the ones that pick your president. Is that what I'm hearing?
Okay. So we have political parties, ne? Political parties are the ones that select presidential candidates. We don't have a say in who the political parties choose. The political parties have their own leadership and their own members. You understand? Now, when we do the voting, when we do national elections, you vote for the party of your choice. So, for example, we have the ANC, you have the EFF, you have the MK, you have the DA, UDM, Inkatha Freedom Party, etc. All those parties have people that they've selected through their own internal processes, candidates, and then those candidates. Now, remember, you can't just change a president like that. There are impeachment processes in place. So once the party selects the candidate, the candidate can't be changed anyhow. There needs to be clear processes in place. So with which we vote for the party. Say now the party gets 50% plus one votes, then the party has the majority. So the party is going to run all the portfolios of the country, all of them. Now the party is the one that the president who has been chosen is the one who has the sole responsibility of selecting members of his cabinet. That is to say, ministers and deputy ministers. Those ministers are going to oversee all the different portfolios. Now that's the national element. Do you have a question?
So, all right. Now I think that's what I was thinking. So what is happening is that the way that everything is selected, these considered names like ANC, EEF, and things of that nature are considered like new age tribes. And if that new age tribe gets selected, then that whole process of the deputy and things of that nature happens, correct?
Yeah.
What? So y'all really don't. So that means that there's no such thing as as a mayor, a
No, no, no,
senator,
no.
none of that.
Remember, okay, yeah. So that's national. So the House of Parliament, ne? Parliament in our country has two houses. We have the National Assembly, which is what I just described. So it's the president and the ministers. And then we have the Council, National Council of Provinces, the NCOP. That's the second house of parliament. Now we have provinces in the country. A province has two leaders. No, no, not two leaders. One leader called the premier of the province. And then within the provinces, there are municipalities and then towns. Those towns have mayors. Do you understand? Those towns have different mayors. Now, a province is comprised of municipalities. Each municipality is run by a specific political party. That specific political party is gonna literally choose the mayor. So we do have mayors, we do have premiers, we do have councillors. But remember, everything is based on the political party. Where a political party fails to get a majority, there's an option of coalescing with another party, which we call a coalition, or where multiple parties come together, blah, blah, they call it the GNU, Government of National Unity. So it's not really a tribal process, it's more like a British process. But remember, South Africa, the current structure is a structure that comes from the British colonial project. And then after the British colonial project, we had the Union of South Africa. And then after that, we had the Democratic South Africa. So a province in South Africa is what you guys will call a state in America. So we've got 9 provinces. We've got Limpopo, Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, Western Cape. We've got, I don't know if there's any other province that I'm forgetting. Probably there are many. And then within those provinces, a province is going to have its own capital and other towns. A province, yeah, Northwest, we have Northwest as well. A province is going to have its own capital. But remember, in one province, you only have one premier. So out of all those provinces, there's one leader called the premier of the province. The premier comes from the party that won, if there's a party that won with an outright majority. So the party is going to choose the premier. And then each municipality, you see, is going to run its own region or municipal region. Then they're going to choose, the parties are going to choose mayors. So the town is going to have a mayor, another town is going to have another mayor, another town is going to have another mayor. Now that's the provincial side. So in parliament, it's 2 houses. National Assembly, the president sits there. National Council of Provinces, now it's where the mayors and the premiers and the councillors do their discussions. Now in South Africa, generally, most people are only familiar with the National Assembly. It's the one that's quite popular. The National Council of Provinces, the NCOP, is not really televised a lot, but it's gaining traction in recent years. So no, there is an actual structure. The problem is that we don't really have an established process of voting for independent candidates. And also, with that being said, we don't really vote for individuals, even in the parties themselves. But the duty of the party now is to figure out which because obviously we have a lot of political events in the country because of our history with apartheid. We do, there is an element of personality politics. So if you're a charismatic leader, if you resonate with rural people, if you resonate with young people, etc., stuff like that do count. The presidential campaign of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, we do have stuff like that. It's not necessarily done the same way. Like we don't have a debate between the candidates like that, but the candidates have to go to the poorest areas and talk to the people. People must perceive them as being humble. People must perceive them as being popular. They must go to the youth, promise that they're going to take care of the youth and stuff like that. we don't have like approval ratings. Like there are no studies that are being done to check the approval ratings, but popularity is quite evident at times, but it doesn't indicate anything about voter outcome or voting outcomes. So sometimes you may think this leader is popular, but then the results after the voting say something different. So yeah, another question.
You got my mind going right now. So the only reason why I said tribal, right, is because it's like whoever's president, these parties are still around. And then it's like if they don't side with the national part of things, they kind of are running things. So when you're talking about the province, this is all new to me. So I'm like I'm fast learning right quick. So when it comes to the province, now that I understand the correlation from where I'm at, it makes a lot of sense. So each one of these province is like what these parties are trying to how you say win over per se.
Yeah, like the provinces. Okay, so yes. So generally, a new party knows they're not going to get the national vote. Like any new party in South Africa knows they will never get the national vote. So they're going to try and at least get like a seat in parliament because our parliament works in something called proportional representation, I guess. So there's about 400 seats. So a party that gets 60% of the vote, they're going to do a calculation. Yeah, the live is going to be on YouTube, Sandile Tukani. So a party that gets a specific percentage of votes will get a corresponding amount of seats in parliament. The amount of seats are very significant because when parliament votes, generally your party will agree with you, although they can disagree, but they probably won't want to disagree because they may lose their jobs afterwards. It's like the Senate in America, where some Senate members may disagree with the Republican president. So when America has the Republicans and the Democrats, in South Africa, we've got 10 versions of that, all in the same parliament.
But I was thinking,
Yes, that's yeah, that's
because
the case. That's the case. So now, what that means is that even the smaller parties, even if they don't get to national, which majority of them know they will never get to national, at least if they can get a seat, one seat in National Assembly or two or three, if they get one, two, or three seats, they can at least, be needed in some instances by the bigger parties to support a policy, to be approved. So let's say a minister of electricity is going to come through and say, Minister of Energy and Resources, whatever, is going to come and say, look, we are proposing this bill to change the payment structure in mining, blah, blah, blah. Most of the parties are opposing it. You need like 2 more votes to win over. So you're going to go to the small parties now. Now, the small parties are not going to vote with you unless you give them something. You give them like a seat in the deputy ministerial position. So that's how the small parties will operate. You understand that? That's how the small parties are going to operate. That's one in the National Assembly. In the National Council of Provinces, the small parties will definitely probably have councillors. Now, councillors are the lowest level of government. These are the local leaders. So in any township, any village, any little small town, there has to be a councillor. The councillor is the one that goes to sit in the National Council of Provinces. The councillor sits there. The mayor comes to report to the councillors. The councillor must question the mayor. The premier sometimes comes to report as well and stuff like that. So that's how the NCOP works. Now, in a municipality, which is a region of a province is what? A state in America, right? So a municipality is run by a specific party if that party has won the outright majority in that municipality. If that party did not win the outright majority in that municipality, it's going to be run by parties that have coalesced together. So if like there's 2 parties that can get their majority, they coalesce in what is called a coalition of parties. If none of them can get majority, So they're probably going to do a government of national unity or another arrangement. In that sense, then, before they get into that agreement, they have to reach a deal. Who's going to get what position? Who's going to be the mayor? Who's going to be the premier? Do you understand? So the main thing that parties will want to do is to get a majority so that they can decide who gets the premiership, who gets the mayoral, position. So that's how it operates. It's they call it a parliamentary republic, which has two houses. Oh, there's also like a minority government. True, you can also constitute a minority government if you don't get an outright majority. True, forgot about that one. So just to go back to the point then that my brother Uzulu had raised about how we liberate ourselves. I think the best way we're gonna liberate ourselves is to probably align with people who already want to liberate. Some people don't want to be liberated. Some people don't see a problem with their lives. We are going to try and awaken our people through platforms like TikTok, or YouTube, Facebook. We are going to talk about things. We are going to expose like we're doing here every other week. That's one. If we can meet physically, or you can meet with some people physically and talk to them, that can be done as well. But remember, in your pursuit of awakening others, don't lose yourself. You still have to look out for yourself. People are snakes out there. You're going to spend all your energy trying to awaken people only for them to go and stab you in the back. You understand? So you need to be very calculated also in that. The most effective method, though, we can liberate ourselves is to unite with the people who already want that liberty. If there's a slave who enjoys the comforts of being a house slave because they don't get burnt by the sun, the master calls them every now and then. You understand? The master calls them every now and then so that they can lick the plate of the master, lick some gravy that's left over. If that slave is happy with that, trust me, when you're trying to escape, that slave is going to go and report you. So maybe you're going to look for the slave who actually doesn't want to be a slave, because they were never a slave anyway. They were made slaves. So it's the same thing we can do as well. There's someone here who says they sell moringa. There's a moringa.
So
Yeah.
so
Okay.
ungakavali ngoba vele usuzohamba. I was also looking at the rolling out of 370. I mean, I think it's a social relief grant. Ngicabanga ukuthi uhulumeni usebakhovile abantu futhi. I don't know, I think it's 16 plus or minus, somewhere there, balapho nje ku 15 million to 16 million people who are receiving these 370. And those people are very loyal now, in such a way that even if you can, I mean, go on live and say i-370 ngeke izitholakale next month, uzowuza umsindo, umsindo nje uzoba khona. And then that tells you ukuthi abantu, it looks like now they are happy with 370. It makes a difference in their lives, you understand? It makes a difference. If we will tell batshela ukuthi no man, forget about 370, asambeni sokwenza 1 or 2, they will never know. Instead, they will fight you to when uzosinikani. At least our government is doing something for us. So it's the same thing language. You know, this system is corrupting ngale ndlela ukuthi these people create problems and give us those problems and come back and pretend to solve those problems so that our people will clarify them and say, you know, when you come and preach and say it over and over, there's no jobs, there's no investors, we are losing, you know, they are preaching one and the same thing. Obviously, all those words will sink into your head and think that you are in trouble. And then when now the government comes and say, no, but this is the plan that we have, we're going to give you 370 every month. At least our government is doing something. You come, you have nothing on your name. You don't even have 20 rands in your pocket, but you have an idea that might save us in the near future. They will never ever listen to you because in the you are just coming empty-handed. The government is doing something better. They will even ask you, "What are you doing right now to help the poor?" Obviously, we are not doing anything other than channel them into a right direction. But they can't. You must have something in your hand. You understand? So this thing, it goes back to this guy who said, when you fight for Africans, or if you fight for black people, you can't use your both hands because the other hand is pushing the other black people who wants to fight you, that you are fighting the white imperialists.
Yeah. Aibo. Network. You guys hear me though? Can you guys hear me? Are you guys still there? Okay, okay.
Sesiyabuzwa manje.
All right. Hey, let me just be quick because I know it's gonna get worse. DTK Puti, if you've ever been bitten by a mouse or a rat, you will feel a sting and then shortly it will disappear. Because impuku iluma ivutela. Nqwa negwandane negundwane ncamashi. Ncamashi negundwane liluma livutela. That is how the government is operating. It's called the tiptoe strategy. We are living in a Hunger Games society, Tina. It's like Hunger Games. You have to dance for your supper. You can't speak about things that are going to be too real. That's why in the 370, you can't touch it. You can't touch in the 370, then the social grant, then the disability grant. If a disability grant year 2000 is not enough, how much more in 370? Think about it. Data, a monthly data is not even 370. Just monthly data and mobile data alone is not 370. What can you really do with the 370? Besides buying some few items, and I'm speaking now in terms, if you are at the lowest level of society, you can buy some food again for like a few days, maybe a week. If you are gonna uzophila nje ngala mpilo nje. La mpilo nje yokuhlanganisa uzothenga amathumbu enkukhu, chicken intestines. Those are the only things that make sense that you can buy at that level with 370. Just to eat for a few days. You have to buy the lowest quality of maize meal, lowest quality of oil, lowest quality of sugar, at least even fake sugar from the from the Somali shop owners. Do you understand? You don't even afford to get sick at that level of society. Right now, the government is talking about the national dialogue, which is going to cost 70% of a million, 700,000 rand, 700 million rand, 70% of a billion, sorry. Do you understand what 700 million rand is? They're going to spend it on something called the national dialogue. You do know there is no national dialogue that's needed. What's needed is for black people to get jobs, black people to be funded in their businesses, infrastructure in the township, fix the roads, fix the roads. You understand? Fix the roads, fix the schools. But more than that, what we need right now is jobs, more than anything else. Just build firms near the townships like they've been doing in the past. Build firms there, that's what we need. Not some national dialogue yokunuka. I-dialogue imitheni asifuna ukuncokola noRamaphosa thina. Kufuneka imisebenzi. That 350 nonsense, I know it very well, and I understand people who need it. You understand? Uzothini ulambile. Uzothini, I don't want 350. I want to fight for justice. Though there's no justice, xa ulambile bhuti. You see, when you're hungry, even these conversations, they sound like someone was saying in one of my videos, ukuthi, my brother, these things you're talking about, it's middle class stuff, Tina Slambile. I get it. But we have to talk about these things. Yabo. So there is that element. What we need Tina to do ngoku, before I drop off, is to sell and buy from amongst each other. Someone mentioned moringa tree that they have. I'm willing to buy moringa leaves and moringa powder. It's very good. If someone has soursop, sell it. Don't wait for someone. Make a video on TikTok and sell. That's it. Like, you don't have to wait for some funding. That's not going to happen. Because 1 minute, that guy will ask you to sleep with him before you get funding. And if you deny him that, and next thing you disappear, and then we'll say justice for you again. We don't want that anymore. Sell something. Shea butter, guys. If you can save up to 3,000 rand, you buy shea butter that's already made. You buy packaging. You sell that damn thing on TikTok. And you know what you do? You just search on Google the benefits. And then in your video, you keep on posting. You post 100 times a week. 100 times a week. You don't have to wait. You shoot 20 videos, 5 minutes each. You cut them into small. All I'm just trying to say is that we have to get it moving already. We can't wait. We have the buying capacity. That's why ShopRite bets on us. That's why Pep bets on us. ShopRite is 3 times bigger than Pick n Pay. And you do know that ShopRite doesn't even own a lot of the stuff they sell. They don't even pay for the stuff they sell. They sell some of those things on consignment. They get those things 4 months in advance, sell them to us, get that cash, invest in the financial markets, make back the money, the cost of sales, pay the supplier. The real money they make is in the financial markets. These companies that sell food are not even food companies. They are actually investment companies. We supply their capital, Tina. They supply products that they don't even buy because they have surety. They get on consignment. So you find that 80% of all the money that goes to ShopRite every month goes into the financial market, and they just pay for cost of employee and operation expenses like rent and whatever. So Tina, we have to sithengise from each other. I'm still gonna say that because ayikho enye indlela. Trust me, we're not gonna do it any other way. We're not gonna do it any other way. TikTok is not monetizing. If it was monetized, a lot of people would make money from TikTok. You understand? It's not monetizing in this country. People have to subscribe. Even that one is not really, people have to give you gift and all those kind of things. YouTube, it takes long to monetize. So there's a lot of things that are just making it so difficult for Tina. But we have to just keep on waking up and doing it. So, Mageba, to answer you, I think we just need to work together, Abon. We have to have standards, first and foremost. We have to be honest and honorable. So if I buy something for Umtwaguti, maize, as it was promised. Yabon. If I sell something, the person must pay. The person must pay. Butelezi, I agree with you. We actually have to be sellers more than anything. We must sell. We have to sell everything. If you have a little thing you are doing, little business, put it here. People are going to buy, man. Guys, hayi zawucambalala lixesha lokulala.
Siyathobeka Camagu, siyabulela mhlekazi.
Khosi,
Makube ngokuzayo. Sale kahle nanke.
khosi good. Yeah, so that's it, my people. Thank you so much. Don't forget, I am available on YouTube. Sandile Tukani, go subscribe, watch the videos. Thanks to the gifters. Keep on gifting, guys, for the work to continue. Cheers.